All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly UK Sangha. And welcome, Pietro. Good to have you. Good to see your face. Um, we're just about to get into a sutta reading here, but um, if you have anything you want to talk about first, Pietro, anything on your mind, please feel free to jump in.
Okay, I will listen to
Okay.
the lecture. Okay.
Okay. Um, Perfect. And guys, remember, like at any point I'm reading the sutta, if something pops up for you in your mind that you'd like to talk about or interrupt the reading, feel free to just blurt it out. You don't need to raise your hand or anything like that. You can just interrupt me. Um, yeah, it might be something if you want to say something. This is a Sangha call, so this is about community. So I like if we get each other talking to each other, get the brain juices flowing, thinking about our practice. Also, I could just talk the whole time. I could talk all day. Um, I have no amount of lack for talking, so I can just talk the whole time. Or if you guys want to listen, that's cool too. But if you have any questions, any topics, any things you'd like to share, feel free to at any point. So today, the sutta that I picked out is called The Greater Discourse on the Mass of Suffering. So this sutta is pretty heavy. Like it gets into some pretty explicit details to really nail the point home about the danger of um, the source of suffering or certain sources of suffering, namely sensual pleasures and desire for gratification in the realm of sensual pleasures. And I really like how it gets pretty gnarly. I really like how gnarly the sutta gets. It kind of it reads like a death metal song at some of it. So a lot of people would be surprised by that there's something like this in the teachings of the Buddha. Um, they think the teachings of the Buddha is all like, oh, sunshine, rainbows, nothing explicit, nothing too grotesque. But um, I'll just hop right into it. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's Park. Then when it was morning, a number of bhikkhus dressed, and taking their bowls and outer robes, went into Savatthi for alms. Then they thought, it is still too early to wander for alms in Savatthi. Suppose we went to the park of wanderers of other sects. So they went to the park of the wanderers of other sects and exchanged greetings with the wanderers. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, they sat down at one side. The wanderers said to them, friends, the recluse Gotama describes the full understanding of sensual pleasures, and we do so too. The recluse Gotama describes the full understanding of material form, and we do so too. The recluse Gautama describes the full understanding of feelings, and we do so too. What then is the distinction here, friends? What is the variance? What is the difference between the recluse Gautama's teaching of the Dhamma and ours, between his instruction and ours? So in this scenario, the disciples of the Buddha have decided to visit some other spiritual teachers or some other sects of recluses and wanderers who are practicing um, to attain enlightenment. And essentially, what they're saying is, we say the same thing as the Buddha. That's who Gautama is. And they're saying, like, what's the difference? Then those bhikkhus neither approved nor disapproved of the wanderer's words. Without doing either, they rose from their seats and went away, thinking, we shall come to understand the meaning of these words in the Blessed One's presence. When they had wandered for alms in Savatthi and had returned from their alms round, after the meal they went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, they sat down at one side and told him what had taken place. The Blessed One said, Bhikkhus, wanderers of other sects who speak thus should be questioned thus. But friends, what is the gratification? What is the danger? And what is the escape in the case of sensual pleasures? What is the gratification? What is the danger? And what is the escape in the case of material form? What is the gratification? What is the danger? And what is the escape in the case of feelings? Being questioned thus, wanderers of other sects will fail to account for the matter, and what is more, they will get into difficulties. Why is that? Because it is not their province. Bhikkhus, I see no one in the world with its gods, its maras, and its brahmas, in this generation with its recluses and brahmins, with its princes and its people, who could satisfy the mind with a reply to these questions, except for the Tathagata or his disciples or one who has learned it from them. Okay, so he's essentially saying, ask them these questions that is concerned with the Four Noble Truths here. So what is the gratification? So what is this, the suffering? What is the danger? What is the origin of it? And what is the escape? So what is the cessation of it? So these questions are essentially following the trend of how does this come about and how does this go away, which is the fundamental theme of the teaching of the Buddha. Everything is based on dependent origination. The understanding of how things happen and how they go away is essentially all we care about, because it's how you understand how suffering happens and how you can escape from it. So here we go with sensual pleasures. And what, bhikkhus, is the gratification in the case of sensual pleasures? Bhikkhus, there are these 5 chords of sensual pleasures. What are the 5? Forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of lust. Sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, flavors cognizable by the tongue, tangibles cognizable by the body, that are wished for, desired for, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of lust. These are 5 chords of sensual pleasure. Now the pleasure and joy that arise dependent on these 5 chords of sensual pleasure are the gratification in the case of sensual pleasures. So essentially, any happiness that you derive out of the modalities through which you experience reality. So any happiness that is derived out of something that you see, something you hear, something you taste, something you touch, and the craving connected with those. So there's a gratification, and then there's also a craving for it, which is very important to understand. There's a joy dependent upon these things. So there's a pleasure and a joy that arrives dependent on these things. And as it goes on to detail, this joy and this pleasure becomes your prison, and it becomes your ruler, and you become slave to this joy, this unsatisfactory joy that is dependent upon the senses. So it's dependent upon things you experience through the faculties of your own body. And this is kind of like the facade, the illusion, the dummy that takes you off the true path to enlightenment or happiness that is not dependent upon these things. And what, bhikkhus, is the danger in the case of sensual pleasures? Here, bhikkhus, on account of the craft by which a clansman makes a living, whether checking or accounting or calculating or farming or trading or husbandry or archery or the royal service or whatever craft it may be, he has to face cold, he has to face heat. He is injured by contact with gadflies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, creeping things. He risks death by hunger and thirst. Now this is the danger in the case of sensual pleasures, a massive suffering visible here and now, having sensual pleasures as its cause, sensual pleasures as its source, sensual pleasures as its basis, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. Okay, so here the Buddha is describing the first danger of sensual pleasures by using an analogy for all the lengths that we'll go to just to gratify sensual pleasures. So you're going to go through a lot more suffering just to get that, just to bust a nut or whatever it is you're trying to do, right? How much suffering did you have to go through just to get that one little 30 seconds orgasm or whatever else it is? Maybe it's something you find delicious, or maybe it's something you want to see. All the suffering, all the hoops that we jump through just to gratify a sensual desire. It's not worth it. If no property comes to the clansman while he works. Welcome, Anna. Good to have you.
Hello.
If no property comes to the clansman while he works and strives. Yeah, I'm gonna mute you, Anna, because there's some background noise. Okay, that's perfect. But please unmute yourself if you have anything to say or a question to ask. Okay. If no property comes to the clansman while he works and strives and makes an effort thus, he sorrows, he grieves and laments, he weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught, crying, "My work is in vain, my effort is fruitless." Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. So if all this effort you're trying to make to gratify a sensual desire doesn't actually work, then you'll suffer even more. So you're going to cry like a little baby and be a victim and throw a pity party and say, "My work is in vain, my effort is fruitless." So that's another danger involved. If property comes to the clansman while he works and strives and makes an effort thus, he experiences pain and grief in protecting it. So even if you do get it, you do get that source of gratification, now you have to protect it, right? That's even more problems. So now you have to find a way to hold on to it and keep it going. How shall neither kings nor thieves make off with my property, nor fire burn it, nor water sweep it away, nor hateful heirs make off with it, as he guards and protects his property? Kings or thieves make off with it, or fire burns it, or water sweeps it away, or hateful heirs make off with it. And he sorrows, grieves, and laments. He weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught, crying, "What I had, I have no longer." Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, the cause simply sensual, being simply sensual pleasures. Right? So oftentimes the suffering we experience from losing something is much greater than the happiness we derived from it. Right? I mean, how many times you can think of, oh, you had a girlfriend and you had a lot of fun, but then you suffer so much because what you had, you have no longer, and you lament and sorrow and grieve. But that's all because you had to protect and you had to hold on to this source of gratification that inevitably is swept away by the winds of the world, just like everything else will be. And inevitably, you will suffer because you didn't see it coming. So you weren't wise. You weren't wise to the impermanence of it. Yeah, Salmo, you have a question? I don't know if your microphone is on. I can't really hear you. Okay. If you have a question and your mic's not working, Salmo, you can type it in the chat, and then I could just read it off. So that works too. But I'm gonna keep going. Okay. All right. Again, with sensual pleasures as the cause, sensual pleasures as its source, sensual pleasures as the basis, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. Kings quarrel with kings, nobles with nobles, Brahmins with Brahmins, householders with householders, mother quarrels with child, child quarrels with mother, father with child, child with father, brother quarrels with brother, brother with sister, sister with brother, friend with friend. And here in their quarrels, brawls, and disputes, they attack each other with fists, clods, sticks, or knives, whereby they incur death or deadly suffering. Now, this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. Right? So, most of the conflict that we experience is based over quarreling over our source of sensual pleasure. So if we feel someone else is taking away our sensual pleasure, or we get some kind of territorial instinct, this is what all wars are based off. So wars are based off conflicts over supplies and resources that are sought after for the sake of gratifying ultimately sensual pleasures. Like, why are we fighting in the Middle East for oil? Is because the oil is going to make some guy a lot of money, and a lot of money is going to buy him more women and more things that he can use to gratify his desires. Whether it's an island where he can go and have whatever kind of degenerate pleasures that he wants on that island, money is the thing that does it for him. So we fight wars for oil and whatever. This is the source of all wars, is for the sake of gratification of sensual pleasures ultimately. Again, with the sensual pleasures as cause, men take swords and shields and buckle on bows and quivers. They charge into battle, massed in double array, with arrows and spears flying and swords flashing. And there they are wounded by arrows and spears, and their heads are cut off by swords, where they incur death or deadly suffering. Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. Again, bhikkhus, with sensual pleasures as the cause, men take swords and shields and buckle on bows and quivers, and they charge slippery bastions, with arrows and spears flying, and swords flashing. and there they are wounded by arrows. Sorry, I lost track of. Okay, I'm over here. And spears and splashed with boiling liquids and crushed under heavy weights. And their heads are cut off by swords, whereby they incur death or deadly suffering. Now this, too, is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. Again, with sensual pleasures as its cause, men break into houses, plunder wealth, commit burglary, ambush highways, seduce others' wives, and when they are caught, kings have many kind of torture inflicted on them. And then the rest of this whole paragraph is just listing all the different ways someone can be tortured. I'm not going to read all of it because it's kind of repetitive, but yeah, a lot of bad things, and especially probably around then, like there's a lot of different ways they tortured people. Um, Again, with sensual pleasures as the cause, sensual pleasures as the source, sensual pleasures as the basis. The cause being simply sensual pleasures, people indulge in misconduct of body, speech, and mind. Having done so, on the dissolution of the body after death, they reappear in states of deprivation, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. And even in hell. Now this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures, a mass of suffering in the life to come. Having sensual pleasures as its cause, sensual pleasures as its source, as its basis, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. Okay, so cause and effect, right? If you're constantly in a state of being a hungry ghost, right? If you're constantly in a state of desiring for something, never getting your fix, never finding satisfaction, always needing another sensual pleasure, always needing more drug, more food, more women, more whatever it is, more music, and you can't find just a state of wholesome satisfaction, then it follows that when you die, if there is, an afterlife or whatnot, it's going to continue the trend. So the idea of cause and effect is that the choices you make now have effects on what the trend will be in the future. So if you practice satisfaction, if you practice being satisfied with nothing and just being happy without sensual desires, and you practice letting go of craving or wanting for something else to gratify you, then it follows that when you die, you'll end up in a good destination. But this is more saying that if you commit all kinds of unwholesome actions, then the idea is that will create bad karma for you. But you don't even have to believe this or think about this on a lifetime scale. It's more important that you see it on the immediate scale in terms of moment to moment basis. So when we indulge in misconduct in body, speech, and mind, we reappear in states of it says here on the dissolution of the body after death, but you can just get rid of that and then just go straight to we reappear in states of deprivation in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. So we can make a living hell for ourselves based on how we think, how we act, what we do, whether it's based coming from wisdom or coming from ignorance, coming for the desire and craving or the gratification of sensual pleasures. If we are constantly chasing down that rabbit hole, you're going to end up miserable in hell. You can see it with a lot of even rich people, Hollywood actors. They become addicted to drugs. They have everything they want, but they're still in hell. So if sensual pleasures made you happy, then these people would be the happiest people in the world, right? The Hollywood actors, the billionaires. But these people are actually the most miserable. And oftentimes, if we look at what the billionaires are up to, right, they're usually the most evil too. And yeah. So we could avoid all of this just by following a noble path and maintaining a noble mind. This is how you win the game of life, and this is how you find true happiness. And you don't need anything. So it's not based on possessions, um, societal status. It's not based on other people's opinions. It's based on the direct experience of happiness. Yeah, so chasing the dragon. You're never going to get the dragon. You'll never get it. The only time you get the dragon is when you stop chasing it. And then there it is. So this is the trick that we have to see through.
Yeah, it's strange because even if one decide, I talk for myself, but even if I decide to change the subject and get into the Dharma or meditation, usually the mentality is hard to change, because maybe you change the dragon, but still wanna find the dragon in the Dharma or in the meditation, this kind of.
No, that's actually really funny that you mentioned that because that's coming up in this same sutta. So you actually predicted what this sutta is going to talk about later in the sutta. So
Okay.
that's actually yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so we'll get to that. Making the Dhamma into another drug. Uh, different stimulation. Yeah, so but the source is the wanting things. So the craving for things, the owning things, the holding on to things. It doesn't matter what that thing is. Um, the things change, but the wanting them is the cause of the suffering here, and that applies to everything, but especially sensual desires. And sensual desires is like it's part of the human condition. It's part of the realm. It's part of the way things are set up here. It's set up for um, evolutionarily to want sensual desires. So we want to have sex because it feels good to have sex, so we can reproduce, right? We want to eat so we can survive. We want to do all these things. It's based on the instinctual mind. And the Dhamma, practicing the Dhamma is becoming aware of all these instinctual processes so you can escape them. So you're not bound by them. They're not you. There is a body and the body has needs, but ultimately those needs aren't the source of your happiness, and they're not your true identity. So you don't see them as self. They're just like anything else. So yeah, it's not a problem. Yeah, like detachment. So detachment is part of the path to enlightenment. But the thing is, it's not a problem that sensual pleasures occur. So I'm not saying here that don't have sex or whatever, don't enjoy food. That's not the problem, right? But it's the striving for these things, the holding on to them, the grasping for them that torments you. So it's okay. It's very natural to have sex. That's fine. But what about all the hoops, all the things, all the lengths and all the feats you go through, all the suffering that happens because of your attachment to sex? That's the problem here. It's not that having sex is a problem, right? So if you make having sex a problem, then you're just going to be repressing it, and you're probably going to become more perverted, right? We can all see this with like Catholic priests and stuff like that, right? They're Catholic priests, but they end up diddling little boys, right? And maybe not just Catholicism, it happens everywhere, right? Not just Catholicism. But yeah. Okay.
If you practice correctly, ultimately, those things naturally fade away, because it's way more dukkha, it's way more exhausting to entertain those things than it is just to let them fade out.
Yeah. So depending on the person, these things may just naturally leave your life. But let's say you're married or something, right? That's kind of different. If you're married, like it's kind of, it's part of being in a relationship is having sex with
It's
that person.
it's pretty down the road. That's it.
Yeah, but let's say you're practicing the Dhamma, and so when like you said, Veta, when you practice the Dhamma, you only deal with the reality that you encounter. So yeah, right now I'm not having sex, so I don't need to be mentally proliferating about it, right? It's not here. So if I if I start imagining it, I start wanting it, I'll suffer, right? But it's not here. I mean, all of us are just sitting here. So if we come into a satisfied, wholesome state, naturally those mental proliferations will fade away. We don't need to make a projection into the future. We don't say, oh, I'm never going to do this or that's never going to happen, because we don't know what the future comes. That's more mental proliferation. But all we deal with is the reality of the moment. And the reality of the moment is there's no sex here. So why think about it? Why want it? Why crave it? That's just going to cause you dissatisfaction.
That's one thing. The other thing is that, well, let's say it this way. I'm very often presented with opportunity in my daily routine. And as soon as there is more involved than, let's say, physical attraction, I mean, the circumstances in which I would be able to engage with another human being in sexual activity, where it becomes so narrow that it basically doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
This is what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, most of the times to get a woman into bed, you have to go through huge lengths and huge feats. You have to almost like you have to psychologically manipulate them. You have to get things perfectly. It's very difficult,
I would
right?
have to manipulate things that are basically not there anymore.
Yeah.
That's more
So
this perspective, someone flirting with you and things like that. Even that becomes so heavy because you can feel the dukkha in the other person. The other person is not on the path. The other person is not seeing what they're doing with themselves, and they're mostly just trying to short-term manipulate somebody else into something for their short-term gain.
Right.
And so doesn't fit.
Yeah, so that's never a good foundation for any relationship. If we look at the relationships that are actually healthy and well adjusted, it's based on friendship, right? So first and foremost, the fundamental value should be friendship. And friendship is important for just normal platonic friends, but friendship is the foundation of any romantic relationship either. Because if it's a romantic relationship with no friendship, it's just going to end up causing a lot of suffering. It's only based on lust. It's only based on sensual gratification. So you end up you getting the thing that you want, even when you get it, you're gonna like, oh, I need to keep it, and need to keep it. She goes off. She does some other guy, right? She cheats on you. Now you want to kill her, right? So this is the suffering that happens when it's not based on wholesome stuff. But it can be you if you find a friend in an opposite sex or whoever you're attracted to, you find a genuine friend, that can be a very healthy and wholesome flowering of a relationship. So it's just about being wise to these kinds of things that play out. But I'm going to continue with the sutta here. Again, with sensual pleasures as the cause, sensual pleasures as the source, sensual pleasures as the basis. The cause being simply sensual pleasures. People indulge in misconduct. Okay. Yeah, so appear in hell, blah, blah, blah. And what, bhikkhus, is the escape in the case of sensual pleasures? It is the removal of desire and lust, the abandonment of desire and lust for sensual pleasures. This is the escape in the case of sensual pleasures. So when the thought comes up, actively spotting it and letting it go, removing it, realizing, oh, this is cause of suffering. Let me not go down that rabbit hole. Let me just, nope, never mind. Start again. Take a deep breath. Enjoy the moment. That those recluses and Brahmins who do not understand as it actually is, gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape in the case of sensual pleasures, can either themselves fully understand sensual pleasures or instruct another so that he can fully understand sensual pleasures. That is impossible. That those recluses and Brahmins who understand as it actually is, the gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape in the case of sensual pleasures, can either themselves fully understand sensual pleasures or instruct another so that he can fully understand sensual pleasures. That is possible. All right, now we're going to get onto material form. And what, bhikkhus, is the gratification in the case of material form? Suppose there were a girl of noble class or the Brahmin class or of householder stock, in her 15th or 16th year, neither too tall nor too short, neither too thin nor too fat, neither too dark nor too fair. Is her beauty and loveliness then at its height? Yes, venerable sir. Now the pleasure and joy that arise independence on the beauty and loveliness are the gratification in the case of material form. And what, bhikkhus, is the danger in the case of material form? Later on one might see that same woman here at 80, 90, or 100 years aged, as crooked as a roof bracket, doubled up, supported by a walking stick, tottering, frail, her youth gone, her teeth broken, gray-haired, scanty-haired, bald, wrinkled, with limbs all blotchy. What do you think, bhikkhus? Has her former beauty and loveliness vanished, and the danger become evident? Yes, venerable sir. Bhikkhus, this is the danger in the case of material form. Again, one might see that same woman afflicted, suffering, and gravely ill, lying fouled in her own excrement and urine, lifted up by some and set down by others. What do you think, bhikkhus? Has her former beauty and loveliness vanished, and the danger become evident? Yes, venerable sir. Bhikkhus, this too is the danger in the case of material form. Again, one might see that same woman as a corpse thrown aside in a charnel ground, 1, 2, or 3 days dead, bloated, livid, and oozing matter, What do you think, bhikkhus? Has her former beauty and loveliness vanished, and the danger become evident? Yes, Venerable Sir. Bhikkhus, this too is a danger in the case of material form. Again, one might see that same woman as a corpse thrown aside in a charnel ground, being devoured by crows, hawks, vultures, dogs, jackals, or various kinds of worms. A skeleton with flesh and blood, held together with sinews, a fleshless skeleton smeared with blood, held together with sinews, disconnected bones scattered in all directions. Here a hand bone, there a foot bone, here a thigh bone, there a rib bone, here a hip bone, there a backbone, here the skull, bones bleached white, the color of shells, bones heaped up, more than a year old, bones rotted and crumbled to dust. What do you think, bhikkhus? Has her former beauty and loveliness vanished, and the danger become evident? Yes, Venerable Sir. Bhikkhus, this too is a danger in the case of material form. And what, bhikkhus, is the escape in the case of material form? It is the removal of desire and lust, and the abandonment of desire and lust for material form. This is the escape in the case of material form. Right, so instead of, I think there's some ways that people might take this that might be offensive to some people. So it's saying like, oh, a beautiful woman is going to age and get old, so there's danger in that, right? And desiring for that woman at the peak of her beauty. But essentially what it's saying is don't objectify a woman at the peak of her beauty, because if you objectify this person, you lust for it, inevitably that beauty will vanish and cause you suffering. So you'll be like Leonardo DiCaprio or something, always keep going, stay the same age, find another young girl when she gets too old, break up with her and get with another young girl, right? So you become kind of like a clown, like you'll be a 70-year-old trying to date a young girl because you're still chasing the dragon of the youthful beauty. But if you realize, no, bodies get old and they decay and they turn to dust, then you can age gracefully, right? Whether you're in a relationship with someone and you get old with them and you still love them, right? There's lots of cute old people couples, and they both look disgusting. They're both about to die, but they still love each other, right? That's very beautiful. Or if you go the bhikkhu route and you just don't get involved with women at all, then you can see the impermanence. So I was hanging out with a monk before, and he told me, like, he was talking to me about his trip to Hawaii, and then like obviously when they're walking on the beach, they're gonna see some beautiful women, right? And these monks, right? They can't really have sex because they're a monk, right? They've made vows. So he says like what he does is he just like contemplates anicca. So like, oh, impermanent. So instead of lusting for this person, you contemplate the impermanence of the body. That's what this whole thing I just read is. Eventually it will die, decay, all the bones will be scattered and rot to dust. So you can let go. So contemplating that helps you let go of that desire, that lust for it. Really viscerally contemplating the impermanence of the physical material body, and that all these bodies are going to die, even your own body. So you stop craving for it because you can see the inevitability of its demise. So that was.
I don't know if anyone is in that practice or at that stage, but actually just getting closer for what most people would be afraid of, especially if you're in a situation where you set yourself boundaries and you're afraid of breaking them. Just getting closer to the object which triggers the fear can be very enlightening, because almost every time I engage with someone who, let's say, my selfishness thinks is very attractive, the ultimately already in the moment of approaching at a distance where you can see the way the body is actually transforming from what you see in your mind, what you think the body looks like, and then actually getting closer and closer to the actual thing and seeing its wrinkles and different skin cells and impurities and things like that.
Right.
Is pretty helpful.
Yes, exactly. So it's helpful for the sake of, like, so you stop, you're not tricked by it anymore, you're not fooled by it. You see what it really is. Really, it's just we're walking corpses, like walking flesh bags full of disgusting stuff. And also the fear of death too. The fear of death is based off ignorance, because like you're afraid of just like the inevitable, right? So to dive into it fully, to fully comprehend it, to fully understand it, to fully play it out in your mind, lets you conquer that fear. And yeah, we're so, like, back in the Buddha's day, it was different, right? People would see dead corpses and stuff like that. Here in modern society, we're very sheltered from death. So I think this is even more important to contemplate. That those recluses and Brahmins who do not understand as it actually is, the gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, the escape as escape, in the case of material form, can either themselves fully understand material form, or that is impossible. That those recluses and Brahmins who understand as it actually is, gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape, in the case of material form, can either themselves fully understand material form, or instruct another so that he can fully understand material form. That is possible. So the whole idea here is not to get rid of, not to repress, but to fully understand. So to fully understand how these processes work, how suffering comes about, how craving comes about, and how it goes away, and how it subsides. So fully understanding the entire process of suffering, the origination of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation. So understanding the whole picture, the full enchilada, is what's important. And that's how you truly are freed from the cycle of it, of samsara.
I don't know if someone knows it or remembers it. I remember watching some videos a couple of years ago, maybe of Dhammarato, and he was doing the analogy of the hand on the hot stove, the hand on the hot stove. I don't know if someone remembers it. About, you know, when you first accidentally put your hand on a hot stove, then you think twice, you know. And some things also for the sensual pleasures is, it's like, okay, I've come this far, I've touched it, I know that it brings me pain in the end, so at the second time I come here, and so I can see early and detach from it better.
Right. So that's why we're all here, is because we've fully comprehended suffering, and now we're coming to know the escape from suffering, the true escape. So And the escape is just remembering to take your hand off the stove every time you forget and put it back on there. So when you touch the stove, it hurts. But most people are touching the stove, not knowing that they're choosing to touch the stove, so they don't know how to take their hand off. So the idea is to fully understand how we touch the stove, how we create our suffering, so that we can stop doing that. It's not as if you're really doing anything. You're just stopping doing what is causing you problems. Okay, now we get to feelings. And this is the part that Pietro was talking about earlier. And what, bhikkhus, is the gratification in the case of feelings? Here, bhikkhus, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a bhikkhu enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. On such an occasion, he does not choose for his own affliction, or for others' affliction, or for the affliction of both. On that occasion, he feels only feeling that is free from affliction. The highest gratification in the case of feelings is freedom from affliction, I say. Again, bhikkhus, with the stilling and applied, the stilling of applied and sustained thought, a bhikkhu enters upon and abides in the second jhana. With the fading away as well of rapture, he enters upon and abides in the third jhana. With abandoning of pleasure and pain, he enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana. On such an occasion, he does not choose for his own affliction, or for another's affliction, or for the affliction of both. On that occasion, he feels only feeling that is free from affliction. The highest gratification in the case of feelings is freedom from affliction, I say. And what, bhikkhus, is the danger in the case of feelings? Feelings are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and subject to change. This is the danger in the case of feelings. Right? So even the Dhamma, even the practice of experiencing joy and good feelings and all the happiness we gain from the Dhamma, and practicing the noble Dhamma that is completely pure and free of affliction for yourself or others, there's danger in that, because those feelings, so those joy, those pitis, those jhanas, they're impermanent, right? And they're not satisfactory. So they're not truly satisfying, and they're subject to change. So when the jhana goes away, now you're craving for it, or you're not in jhana, you're craving for jhana, you're back to square one. It's the same as the craving for sensual pleasures. It's exactly the same. So the idea is to understand this game, understand this trick. Wanting something causes us suffering, and stop wanting it, then we already got it. So that's how jhanas work. When we want jhanas, we're out of jhanas. When we don't want them, we already have it. So you can't want what you have. You can only want what you don't have. It's as simple as that. That those recluses and Brahmins who do not understand as it actually is, the gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape in the case of feelings, can either themselves fully understand feelings or instruct another to fully understand feelings, that is impossible. That those recluses and Brahmins who understand as it actually is, the gratification as gratification, the danger as danger, and the escape as escape, in the case of feelings, can either themselves fully understand feelings or instruct another so that he can fully understand feelings. That is possible. This is what the Blessed One said. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. All right, so that's the end of the sutta. If anyone has any questions, comments, anything they want to talk about, please feel free to go ahead.
Oh yeah, about the stop wanting. It's a great point. I mean, because in a sense, stop wanting. It's like like I don't know. There's a desire that you project into the future, and maybe instead of rushing into it, you try to like if like now with in a bit of perspective, like a right view, in the light of the right view, like you try to see the, I don't know to say, like to see from a more distant perspective, like the point before starting to go pursuing that that wanting. Like
Yeah.
it's not the starting point is not where you're already going, but it's like bit before. And so like also I think I feel also somewhere in my prefrontal cortex, like I give space to the action, like in my imagination here, and I try to see it early, like in a sort of awareness here, where I can see the situation and see that it will not go well. So it's like I create the awareness and try to see in advance.
Yeah, so that's the whole idea of sati. And the practice is, it's kind of a reaction time practice. So it's about catching things quicker. So if we can see the arisal of mental formations in connection with how we start wanting something, and inevitably wanting something, becoming attached to it and clinging for it, and that attachment producing bad feelings, dukkha, we can see the process by which these mental formations arise in their infancy. So if you can see them in their infancy, then you develop a greater understanding of them, and you have more wisdom. So you may see them unfold and dependently originate into suffering. But if you are there when it happens, so you can see it happening, then you are above it. So you're not affected by it. So you can experience suffering without suffering, weirdly, by understanding fully its origination. This is all going back once again to the Four Noble Truths. It's not like, oh, we stop it and now we're not suffering, right? We just fully see, how does this happen? Let me watch it carefully and study it, like a scientist studying an animal that it's learning about in the wild. It studies its habits. It studies what it does. It studies the behavioral patterns of this animal. We do the same thing, but we study the behavioral patterns and the habits of our own mind, by which we fall into the same tendencies time and time again, and the same suffering. And when we fully develop a crystal clear understanding of how this process comes about, then we fully understand how it goes away. And when we fully understand how it goes away, we know even more how to make it go away more. But if you stop it, if you feel like you want something, you feel like you're suffering, and you go into denial about it and you say, no, I'm not suffering, I'm happy, right? You're never going to learn about it. You're never going to fully understand the suffering. You're never fully going to comprehend it. So this is, I guess, what people's ideas about, oh, the dark night of the soul or something like that. It's just not that you are experiencing more suffering than you already were before. You're just really looking at it and paying attention to it now. So most people suffer in the background of their experience. They're not fully aware. They don't even realize how much pain they're in. So it may seem like when they start to look within and they start to look at the pain and the grief and the craving in their own mind, that now all of a sudden they're experiencing more pain and more suffering. But they aren't really experiencing more pain and more suffering. They're just becoming more aware of the pain and suffering that's already there. But that's the first step to bringing an end to it. So to bring an end to the pain and suffering, first you have to become aware of it. And that might be uncomfortable because you become aware of how much shit there really is. So you've been avoiding cleaning your room for so long, or the basement, that you don't even want to look at it anymore. So when you look at it, you see all the shit. And it's a lot of shit. But the first step to cleaning it up is just taking one thought at a time, one feeling at a time, and cleaning it up. And before you know it, it's clean. So the practice is based off one step at a time. It's based off fully seeing, fully waking up to what's going on in our minds, and taking things one step at a time. And the more you see it, the more detached from it you are. So the more you understand how it happens, the less you see it as self. So even the shitty thoughts you're having, the shitty habits, the dukkha that's coming up in your mind, is really only perpetuated by the idea that this is me. So you don't see it. But if you see it fully, you understand that it's not really you, because it's dependent upon various causes and conditions that are outside the realm of your domain, right? Yeah, disidentification. And that brings about, and disidentification and wisdom is cause for the cessation of the suffering that is appearing within you. So you see all the thoughts and all the feelings you're having, instead of as self, you see them as cosmic events. One of my old teachers used to say. So a thought really is a cosmic event. So all of this thing in the universe had to unfold, had to take place. All of these factors, all of these almost unending causes and conditions had to cause each other in order for a thought and a feeling to be produced in this body-mind mechanism. So you realize, instead of drawing a line, this is me and all of that is not me, you realize that everything is causing everything else. And so a thought that I'm having is as much as a cosmic event as a supernova galaxies away. There's absolutely no difference. It's all phenomenal cause and effect. And this is how reality is constructed, and this is how reality operates. There's nothing in the realm of science or the realm of spirituality that is not governed by the law of dependent origination and dependent co-arising. And fully understanding that we see our thoughts as dependently arisen, we see our feelings as dependently arisen, like the clouds in the sky, like the storms, like the oceans and the waves, like the stars and like the sun. We see all of it as unfoldment of cause and effect. That is a sublime experience, and you can really come out of yourself. So you can become freed from the limitations of drawing arbitrary lines. This is me and that's not me. because none of it is self and none of it is not self either. It's just reality. It's just the Dhammakaya unfolding as naturally as it always has. It's unfolding perfectly in accordance with the natural laws of nature. So it's all fine. It's all a beautiful unfoldment. Only becomes a problem when we see things through the lens of this is me or this is mine, right? It's not really me or mine. It's just reality doing reality's thing. So it's completely sublime and perfect, just the way that it is. And I think that's a good note to end it on, unless we have any other questions. No? Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming. It was good to see you, Pietro. Veda, Pietro, you have any closing comments?
Okay, just enjoy the conversation. I see you, Veda.
Cool.
See you.
Anna.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, Veda.
We're all delighted in the words of the Blessed One.
Yeah. They were satisfied and delighted in the words of the Blessed One. And thanks for coming, Anna. It was good to have you in the background as always. She's the one who wrote that. We're all that's great. And Samuel, I'll read that later, but next time get your microphone working and put your camera on so we can actually have a conversation. Samuel is my buddy. I hang out with him in real life. So, all right. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.